welcome to Soilcloth Wine. So, as you're used to a little bit by now, I'm generally interviewing people involved in the wine industry, anyone from winemakers to beverage directors, but today I decided I was going to stop by at a distillery in Tenino, Washington, and I was really interested on some of the stuff that they were doing there, especially because they have a lot of systems that were involved that were highly local, and optimizing quality in some ways that we don't really see in the wine industry. I wanted to bring you this interview that's about to follow because I think it's able to show a lot of the ingenuity that people can go through in the Pacific Northwest. Also this interesting community dynamic that is able to help them access a lot of quality ingredients. Also, it was absolutely wonderful to talk with the guys there. They took me on a tour of their little setup. Awesome, great stories, which I'm not going to have all the time in the world to share with you in the interview, but if you go there, trust me, you're going to have a great time, talk with them, talk with their dogs, and really enjoy the place, ask a lot of questions because they're going to be able to help answer all of those for you very enthusiastically. Alright, hello. I'm currently at Sandstone Distillery. I'm in Tenino, Washington, and it's about mid-afternoon. I just did a tasting and got to have a great tour here. I'm currently with Justin Bourdon and his doggos, and my dear. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that he's making here. So this is a craft distillery, which in this particular area means that 51% of their raw material has to come from this region, and it also means that it has to be produced on the premises. So as you can see behind me, we have a boiler. It's gorgeous. And the first thing that I noticed when I came in here is that a lot of your production, even regardless of the designation that you have to have like 51% of your material sourced from here, is very local. So for instance, your grain is sourced 40 miles south of here. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering what other facets of your production and things you're doing here are locally based.
We try to use as much of our things that we do for infusions. If we can grow them ourselves, we try to do that. Because we have control from start to finish on basically everything. If not, anything that we need for like botanicals for our gins and stuff, we go to a shop in downtown Olympia that sources things from Washington State. That way we can guarantee that at least the bulk, if not all of our stuff, come from as close by as possible, because we don't have time to go harvest juniper. We need somebody else to do that for us. Yeah, we wanted to put a huge push on local for things here, because there's a lot of people that really like to talk about being local, but when it comes to actually walking the walk, they fall a little bit short. So we don't want to have to fall short somewhere.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you mentioned that was like hyper local was that you described your mother going out and you guys have basil.
Yes.
And you have rosemary on the property. Are there any other things that you have that you use as like your botanical infusions and things like that are on the property?
Mint is another thing. That one's a pretty easy weed to be able to grow, and so that's one that we will use for doing our own syrups and whatnot, for especially for doing mint mojitos during the summertime. It's very fresh and kind of a nice pop for summer.
For sure. And then one of the things that I really enjoyed from my flight, and people that know me know that I'm not normally into bacon anything, they had a bacon whiskey here. It was really exceptional. It was the type of thing that elsewhere you would think is more gimmicky, but here it was more subtle, and you discussed talking about like trimming off the fat in order to remove like that oily consistency that you can sometimes get. But what I thought was really cool about that is that you guys are actually using bacon from somewhere nearby here?
Correct. Okay. Yeah, we were feeding most of our spent grains to cows across the road, but another farmer down the road was raising pigs pretty consistently, so we were feeding them the spent grains out of the fermenter. So the grains that we're making the white whiskey as the base were also being fed to the pigs to make the second part for the bacon whiskey. So we had about a half-mile, circle of life on the road. He has since stopped raising pigs, and so we have a piglet of our own that we have been feeding out back. So she doesn't know what she's destined for, but she's living the high life up until that point in time. We're looking for another farmer that is going to be able to do more than one pig at a time, because we go through a lot more bacon than that. Yes. But that was another thing that we wanted to focus on. If we can start stuff from the beginning to end, we want to do that as much as possible, because the closed loop system seems to be working very well for us and most of the facets of what we do.
Yeah. So not only are you into locally sourcing, but there's also a couple initiatives that you have here where you are locally giving back. You talked about your Be a Distiller for the Day program, where you partner with I keep forgetting the name of
Centralia Community College.
Centralia Community College, and you let individuals that would not otherwise have access to the distilling process because of the strict licensing that is required. You have to have a license to go ahead and do that. You also have to have quite the money to do any startups. There's not really any experimentation that's too easy to do.
Not
too
legally,
easy.
at least, yes.
Not legally, not too easily. And so you have that. But what are some of the other ways that you are giving back to the community? Because I see that's like a very big part of your guys' families.
Yes. So before we opened up, we were trying to do a lot of community outreach with just being out and trying to support and bring awareness to functions in the community. We do a lot of stuff for Tenino and Tumwater and whatnot. One big outreach that we did was our race for Rowan's Raspberry Lemonade cocktail, being able to partner with a local nonprofit. And then for other nonprofits, we donate cocktail parties for up to 16 people. Can't give as much monetary, but with that we can give an experience, and they've been averaging for those ones anywhere between $1,000 and $4,000 going at auction, which is a pretty good price for doing something like that. It's a lot more than what we would consider to be worth, but if you want to bid on it, absolutely. But that way we can bring experience and awareness to stuff here, and the more people we can get come through the door, the more people that they have a tendency to drag back with them the next time, as long as they have a good experience.
Yeah, for sure.
So we try to do that as much as possible. We do a lot of total wine tastings. Those they put under the educational guise, so that you're giving samples to people so they can try something without purchasing, to be able to experience something other than a name brand kind of a thing. And so that's a very helpful thing, because a lot of people don't really know much about craft spirits until they actually have it in their hand and they taste it, and then it makes all the world of difference.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that he spoke about before was the fact that he is using the grain, the spent grain, giving it to the pigs, local areas. One individual has cows up the way that's going ahead and eating it. So that's super cool to be able to have that type of relationship. And another thing that I thought was very cool is the fact that you guys give your spent oil to Centralia for their biodiesel.
Correct. Yep.
So that's very interesting. In terms of if you're trying to connect the dots of where like oil comes into this whole process, over here they have, it's called an oil bath.
Yeah.
An oil bath that's used to heat their process for distilling. That's which I'm probably going to show you in a couple of minutes. But yeah, one thing two major characteristics of your guys' distillery that I've noticed are ingenuity and of course quality. And I'd love to hear about the sourcing of this boiler behind us.
So this guy, we've done a couple of different scrapyard saves. This is obviously our largest one. It was originally designed in 1917 as a milk condensing unit over in Chicago by the Arthur Harris Company. It was rated as a 2,000 gallon capacity, all copper interior. That's got a cast iron double wall on the bottom to hold the weight of everything, because the elbow and the condenser here bolt up top, and it weighs about 12,000 pounds total. Then you end up putting 3,000 gallons of water and 5,000 pounds of grain in there, and it's going to get a little bit heavier. It actually started out life in 1948 and went down to the Callison Company down in Chehalis, where rather than processing milk, they made a laxative out of it by processing cascara bark that was peeled by loggers, farmers, and whoever else needed more milk money for the month around here. So they used the same process, but instead of milk that came out, it was a gooey substance that they would re-dry, send off to the pharmaceutical companies, and they made tablets and capsules out of it. It operated from 1949 until 1973, when it finally got shut down. Laid dormant until 2015, when the company started producing the mint crystals from Wrigley's Schmitt Gum, and then they needed the space that this was in for the new production area, so they were going to scrap it out. While they were trying to do that, they had some issues in the community as far as a little bit, not necessarily an uproar, but strong feelings about destroying a piece of local history. So while they were trying to figure out what they were going to do with it, we heard about it through the grapevine, and our primary production vessels are 350-gallon shipping totes for milk and Pepsi syrups, and then our finishing stills were soup kettles from Navy ships. So we figured if we can make those make alcohol, we can make something that was designed for any kind of distillation make alcohol. It's pretty. So we wanted that in here. But we ended up having to get a 12-foot hole cut in the roof of the facility down there. They had to crane it out in these 3 sections, and then we got it here, and it fit through our door with 3 inches to spare, so we're very happy about that.
Nicely done.
Very difficult to make anything taller than that fit in. And we finally, actually just today, so good timing, got it set down on the ground. It's been on dollies since September of 2015. Mostly because of infrastructure issues of not being able to run something this large. But this will take over all of our barreled spirits production for our whiskeys, bourbons, and hopefully eventually brandies. We haven't gotten into those in large scale yet, but keeping the fingers crossed that that's something we can do.
Cool, but definitely one of the things that's most important here is you guys do produce very high quality spirits. And as I spoke on before, I'm a little bit entranced with their bacon whiskey right now. But you guys had a white whiskey that was exceptional. You talked to me a little bit about the fact that you're using a grain peptidase to break down proteins and release yeast available nitrogen instead of using a nitrogen source that was external that you can buy commercially. So for instance, in the wine industry, a lot of people will use DAP, and unfortunately to use it here, there are people that can tell that you have been using DAP. There's definitely a flavor characteristic that comes across in wine, but it's accentuated when you're using a distilling process. And so they're not using that here. That's just like one thing that you guys do. And I was wondering, what is another way that you guys develop like a very high quality alcohol? Unfortunately, the video was cut off, but I wanted to draw attention to two of the gins that I enjoyed most in my flight that I believe exemplified Sandstone Distillery's attention to detail and quality. First, the black gin has a warm orange flavor that plays well with the potency of juniper, as well as being rather anise forward. This warm orange flavor was created by the Bourdons using a potato peeler to remove the orange skin, and this avoids cutting the pith, which would result in bitter extractions. The anise flavor was created by selecting amongst different anise sources, for instance, anise seed, fennel, and licorice root. They experimented through the distillation process with these botanicals and chose anise to give a clean and non-herbaceous flavor. I should also mention that their mother selects the proprietary blends of the botanicals that are used in their gin and places them in like a tea bag-like setup at the top of the still to optimize slow extraction. This process is called vapor infusion. Their mother also creates the shrub selection using fresh and predominantly local ingredients. For the green gin that I mentioned before, which is not juniper forward at all, which I actually really like, they chose to use dried juniper as it takes a long time to rehydrate and then infuse. And that's just a small snapshot of some of the ways that they chose to optimize quality here.